All right, good evening and a very warm welcome to AYV on Sunday here on AYV Television on Channel 53, on the STV Channel 399, on Radio FM 101.7 and on all our different social media platforms. Tonight, we're delving into the implications of the situation of no published manifesto yet in less than 2 months to the June 24th polls. You can follow us, drop your comments, ask your questions, just ensure that you tailor them to the issues being discussed here. And you can do so on the AYV News Facebook page. We will find time to go through some of them later on when we shall join Sally Fuchano Kamara to go through some of those messages. And here with me, I have a star-studded panel to help me unpack the conversation for the next 2 hours. I have the Executive Director for Campaign for Good Governance, Marcella Samba. Good evening and welcome, Marcella.
Thank you so very much, Samuel.
It's been a while.
Yes, and it's always amazing, you know, to speak to fellow Sierra Leoneans on why it's important to have a better country.
Thank you. And we also have the Executive Director for Center for Accountability and the Rule of Law, Barrister Ibrahim Tommy. Good evening and welcome, Lawyer Tommy.
Good evening, Samuel. Good evening, viewers. I'm pleased to be here.
It's always a pleasure having you. And we have the Director of Communications from the National Commission for Democracy, Reverend Jubilee Kabo. Reverend, good evening and welcome to.
Good evening and thanks for hosting me.
Always a pleasure having you. And we move on with the conversation, but we're expecting the National Coordinator for the National Elections Watch, Reverend James Lahai, to be part of the conversation. He called and said he is running a bit late. But let's move on. Gentlemen and lady, let's first, Marcella, let's start off with you. Let's look at how has the political landscape been since the pronouncement of elections dates, the preparations for the Electoral Commission and political parties, to now we're looking at where are the manifestos?
The political context has not changed. It's really unfortunate, and we do not want to go into the elections with that sort of hostility. There's so much inter-party hostility and political polarization. Right. And so without the manifestos, it's only deepening the sort of hostility. So the question is, why are we voting and what are we voting for? So that conversation is not there. And so if we have been for a while with hostility and polarization, and then we're moving to the elections climate proper. You know, the elections are in phase. This is a cycle, you know, pre-elections, elections, and post. And so we are well into the election cycle now. So if we move into the election cycle, and the pre-election phase was characterized by political polarization and hostility, that would be the sort of conflict that would be emanating. And people would think that, oh, the elections is about political party contestation, which is not the case. You just made a very brilliant introduction on AYV just now to say that what are the aims, what are the policies that we are talking about? And I think that's missing in the conversation. Right. And I feel that how, for example, can political party put forward their campaign team without having manifestos? Because even the campaign team that you put together delineates your manifesto. So, for example, if you are articulating issues, because that's a really burning issue and a thorny issue now, around how, for example, ordinary Sierra Leoneans can access healthcare facilities. You know, so if you're putting forward a manifesto to say, we're going to have, you know, one sober hospital, for example, that's a very tangible selling point for any political party right now, because it's a critical issue. People are flying out to Sierra Leone and people are dying of causes that otherwise could need attention. So, for example, your campaign team, we should begin to see those in the campaign team as people who will be able to actualize that vision. So if we don't have that vision, where are we heading for? Leadership has to be visionary. And Manifesto actually stipulates and outlines that vision.
By Satomi, let me hear your precursory remarks. So Marcella made something very clear. All what we've seen is the announcement of a campaign team. And but what are the things that this campaign team should work on to deliver the elections for the presidential candidates? We do not know the plans. There are promises being given here and there, but what do we hold them to? What are the policies that citizens should vote on at this point? We're in the dark as a nation.
The good thing is that we are in a democracy, a multi-party democracy, although it has to be said, and no disrespect intended for the other political parties, this is pretty much a two-horse race at the presidential level. But it's good to see some form of plurality or more parties competing at the parliamentary level. Unfortunately, we may not get to see those policies perhaps until maybe 2 or 3 weeks or even later before the elections. But the reality is that, and unfortunately, again, this country, I don't think, and this is why we're having this conversation, we really want elections to be won or lost based on policies.
Right.
Sound policies, sound plans, realistic, smart plans, right? Unfortunately, it hasn't changed a lot, and I don't think it's going to change anytime soon. Elections are not lost or won largely on policies or what we call in manifestos there. They are won or lost on things that are not generally related to what political parties promise or don't promise. Because we have already, as a people, taken sides. I'm not saying there is no need for good policies, good manifestos. This place will change, and it is changing gradually. We're now looking forward to these policies, and hopefully we are going to be holding governments to account for the policies or promises, the pre-election promises they make. But the reason you haven't seen these policies or manifestos 2 months, 3 months, even 6 months before elections so that we can interrogate those, it's largely because, as I've said, it is not, at the end of the day, it is not what decides who wins or loses, because there are people, in fact, I was making a joke the other day, there are people who are constitutionally capable of voting for any other party other than red or green. By their constitution, they cannot see themselves doing anything otherwise. For those people, I've always said, in a country like ours, just go and write down your name in a ledger so we don't print ballot papers for you. Let's save money, right? For those people, unfortunately, is a significant majority of them, they do not care about what a party's manifesto says. Their mind is made up. Don't confuse me with your policies or your facts. That is where they are. That is not to say manifestos are not relevant. They are absolutely relevant. And like Marcella said, for me, if you put together a campaign team without having perhaps thought through or even disclosed your plans, it presupposes that you have already formed in your head what your plans are. And of course, that is the right thing to do. But it is only important, in my opinion, that you have put out the manifesto, and we now know that if he has Miss X on his campaign team, Miss X is somebody that we can trust on education, on healthcare delivery, on good governance credentials. You've got to have people on your campaign teams based on their credentials, their pedigree, what they can bring to the team, and it has to reflect your flagship promises, as it were, in the manifesto. Now, the fact that you've now constituted that campaign team suggests that, again, if you want to go by that standard, suggests that you are either going to make sure that the manifesto meets or is in line with the credentials of those people, rather than what the realities of the country are and what you seek to address. Essentially, a manifesto should really reveal your views, that's your beliefs as a person, your intent, your aims and policies, but most importantly, your motivation. Why are you running for this position? We'll need to see that. And then give us an opportunity as citizens, for what it's worth. Let's interact with that and ask questions.
Just out of curiosity, looking at how we've practiced politics over time, especially during elections in this country, and so those supporting APC, those supporting SLPP, some majority of them will just feel like, oh, it's just about the color, it's just about the political party. They care less about the policies put forward by these political parties, giving them reasons as to why they should support or vote any of them. After elections, are the stories the same? Because many of them would be looking forward to, oh, well, it's SLPP, it's our party. So when the SLPP wins, we should be okay. So how do we relate those policies after elections?
So that's why there's a sense of disillusionment with democracy. So let no one fool you. Democracy or elections will never or have never ever translated into economic prosperity. So oftentimes citizens or voters get disillusioned, get disappointed. The assumption that the moment I vote my green or red, my life has changed. Lives change, but unfortunately, it's not for everyone. It's for mostly the few guys at the head. And I say guys in a very deliberate way, because it's mostly men. And that leads me to another point that I've always made. For me, in this election, and in previous elections, and in future elections, it is one thing to promise X, Y, Z. It's another to have a funding strategy. I'm looking more to what these parties are going to suggest as ways of funding their programs. Because let's face it, we all know what the problems are. We need water, light, economic issues confront us as a country. All of that. I can perhaps write a manifesto for any political party off the top of my head from here. But what we haven't been able to do, and this is my proposal, and I'm glad that I have this opportunity to make this point. You can have all the great plans in this world. If you do not have a funding strategy that really that radically changes the way we're currently funding our development programs. So we're not going to get out of here. Listen, the current funding strategy that we have is what we've had since independence, right? Collect money in our Taki, royalty. What's the royalty on our our minerals, right? Export tax, like that. Guinea and Liberia still export more diamond and gold than Sierra Leone, even though we have more of that than them. We have Sierra Leone, for example, zero interest. We don't have 1% of the profit that, I mean, we have the world's, I think, second largest deposit of bauxite. We make 0%, we share 0% in the profit that comes from that place. We have to have a rethink of our funding strategy. Poverty will not end. We were critical of the previous administration, just as we are critical of the current administration in terms of the economy. And I always say to myself, no matter how bad these leaders are, sometimes they also want to solve problems. But the reality is, if we didn't have development partners funding our capital development projects, the revenue that we generate only pays salaries. Samuel, let's be honest, pays salaries and pays interest on debts and debts that we take. It's mostly the roads you see, right? The big projects. We talked about the airport. We needed the PPP plan. We couldn't raise money to build our own airport. The highway, Wellington to Mashaka, the double carriageway, we needed a PPP, right? The truth is that we are broke as a country, not because we don't have the natural mineral resources. It's because we haven't thought really seriously about how to create wealth for this country and fund our development programs.
That's the purpose of the manifesto.
Absolutely.
That's it.
That's what I'll be looking for.
So you delineate the plans and you tell us where you get the money to fund those plans.
Absolutely.
All right.
Absolutely.
So Reverend, fundamentally, let's understand the relevance, especially with days ahead to the country's polls. We've not seen any comprehensive plans from any of the political parties. And given we know we have about 16 or 17 registered political parties, but according to the PPRC, about 13 of them have been able to meet the criteria to contest in the elections. And like Lawyer Tommy said, the political landscape is like, it's having a duopoly, APC and SLPP. But we've not seen any comprehensive plans. Now, the other day, IGR launched a report tracking promises made in the New Direction Manifesto. But with days ahead, how can citizens then be able to see on what basis they would be voting, either the APC or the SLPP in the June polls?
Very interesting. And it's a privilege to be part of this conversation, to discuss the concerns that are related to the issues being raised. I might say jokingly, when I was discussing this subject matter with somebody, I said I will be on AYV on Sunday, and we're going to be looking at this subject matter. And the person said, our politicians, they are tired of telling lies. That is why they refuse to. They've refused to put a document together, because we year in, year out, you look at what they've written in the past, and you make comparison with what they've done. You see the far cry between what is documented and the reality on the ground. For people in say, project practice. They will talk about the plan and the actual. And the plan is actually far from the actual. And so this person said, it's because they're tired of telling lies. This time they want to be honest with the citizens. So it's open to everybody's guess. And so at the end of the day, somebody will say, well, I did not tell you this. Where is it? It's nowhere in black and white. But honestly, even though it might sound like a joke coming from this person that I had this conversation with, it gives you an opportunity to reflect on the state of affairs in our country, the way we see each other, and how much respect we think we can extend to the other person. And for me, that is where the problem is. How much respect do we have for each other in the political space? The governors and the governed. For, let's say from a constitutional perspective, looking at Section 35 of our Constitution, I think it's subsection 1 that states that these politicians or political parties should be shaping the political will of the people. And how do you shape the will of the people if you are not prepared to undertake any kind of research and give us a comprehensive document that we can always look at to say, this is where they are coming from, and this is where they will take us to? It's not there. And again, reflecting on the past, the quality of what they've been producing. Just now, the lawyer was talking about what should actually be the focus of manifestos. How do we fund our development programs? Because I think it's IGR in their 2018 Citizens Manifesto, they were saying almost everything is a priority. We know the needs. We know the concerns in the country, but it's about how do we get to solve them. And that question has not been answered adequately. And it's even worse this time that we are not putting out anything. Well, we don't want to sound pessimistic now, to say nothing will come out. Probably after today's conversation, somebody might say, you know what, let's review what we've already done and put it out to the public. Okay, but the fact that we have something like 48 days to go, less than 2 months to the polls, and we don't have a comprehensive document that this campaign team should be going around to us. For me, it tells me, number one, reflecting on, it might sound as a joke, that they're tired of telling lies, but number two, they have no regard for the people of this country. That you are coming to me to say, I should give you my vote, which is actually translated into the power that you're going to exercise at the end of the day. But you're not coming to me with anything substantial or comprehensive. It means you have no regard for me. And that, for me, is a serious concern in our democracy.
Should we go back to what Lawyer Tommy mentioned earlier? That given, so whether or not messages, the political parties have messages, whether or not they have plans to move the country, Sierra Leoneans have already made a decision that, no matter what, na APC or SLP, na APC abon, na APC adida, na SLP abon, na SLP. And you look at the country regionally, politically we are already divided. I mean, they will tell you Southeast is a stronghold of the ruling SLPP, Northwest is a stronghold of the opposition APC. So when you take a look at even activities of those political parties, you see the crowds. What are the messages being preached out there by the politicians or these political parties? They sometimes only tell you about, if you vote landing at this go happen, if you vote landing at this go happen. But what are the realities? How are they going to address the issues on ground? It's not clear.
Of course not clear. It should be the manifesto that will give that direction. It's not there. But Samuel, let me address something.
Quickly, yeah.
I know we still have this controversy surrounding the choice of reactivate the electoral system, the district block
proportional representation.
Yes, proportional representation system. I am going to say this, and of course I will be on record to say this system is going to spring surprises for most of the politicians. Now, with the first past the post, the constituency thing, it's just, even by one vote, somebody gets a seat, and that political party is represented. But with what is coming let's expect surprises. And this mindset about strongholds, for me, I think it is going to change. And so let's look at it from that direction. And also continue to ask our politicians, please tell us on which grounds you want us to support you in your bid to continue or to obtain power. We need to know, because we are making progress in life. Agreed, they are decided voters. And we have a handful of swing voters. But those that you might call handful, they can still influence the outcome. And that is why we need to have something substantial to speak to those that are undecided. And you cannot even tell that those that you think are decided, based on strong policies, and especially policies that are based on how to improve on our political economy, to ensure we have one that is robust. It might just change the mindset of people and get them to vote in a certain direction. Gradually, we are moving away from the kind of political practices that we are used to. Now, even though for me, I don't call it a ban, but now we are talking about people not going to the streets with the carnivals. Who knows what might change next? And you can only now rely on the power of the idea that you have to sell to the people. We need that kind of thing. The politics of this country will change one day soon, where it's not just about violence, people sponsoring violence to intimidate others, but we can get to the point where we can safely say it's about ideas. And such ideas are not just to be thrown around. They should be thoroughly documented. And they should be presented such that it is in the best interest of the people. Again, as part of this conversation, even as the politicians have refused to give us the direction that we should be headed, there's still no, we don't have a vacuum. Recently, IGR and partners, they launched the Citizens Manifesto. It might not be comprehensive, but honestly, it is speaking to something. The 6 demands and the 6 commitments.
Right.
Those are very important, and let's look at them. And we can even add to them. Because for me, one thing that is so central on my mind, and I speak on behalf also of my commission, what is the position of these political parties when it comes to political tolerance, when it comes to national unity and cohesion? We need a position on that. Thus the need for the manifesto.
For a plan to be published.
Yes.
All right. Let's quickly welcome Reverend James Lahai, the National Coordinator for National Elections Watch. Reverend, good evening and welcome to AYV on Sunday.
Good evening, Samuel. Good evening, viewers.
Just before I ask you for your precursory remark, Marcella, let me ask this question about political accountability. When these parties publish their manifestos, their plans, we've always seen over time, from the agenda for change, agenda for prosperity, the new direction, where they would then translate those political plans into national agenda, into putting them into national document for implementation. You know, and the rhetorics we've seen over time where one political party would tell you action better pass attention, the other would copy and perhaps fine-tune it to talk and do. We've seen the new direction, we've also seen the right direction coming up, all these rhetorics in elections. But how then do we use these documents to hold these political parties accountable? So, for example, in 2018, the New Direction Manifesto made about 536 promises. Some were completed according to IGR, Biometer, some, have commenced, others not touched and all of that. Where do we bring political accountability with the use of these manifestos and now we do not have any?
So before I really answer your question on political accountability, I really don't want some issues to lay on the table and pass.
Go ahead.
Tommy mentioned that democracy do not yield dividend. And, you know, this is the supposition that politicians have mustered over the years. And you see, and that's the exact state of affairs that we are in. And so what you see today is a scrambling for political power, because democracy has become very unhealthy. The other side of democracy is what people are running towards, when democracy cannot benefit the people, and it leads to a lot of disillusion. And it is our role as civil society to uphold the tenets of democracy and to change the discourse. And I believe this evening, that is what we are supposed to do.
Right.
Because poverty is no longer fashionable. And I want to also mention that democracy has delivered in this country. In 2000, prior to 2002, the late President Kaba mentioned that he would deliver peace for this country. He made it an agenda. All his actions, what he mobilized, the people he worked with. I have listened to several people like Dr. Spencer and others who worked with him during that era, and how they mentioned that the late President Kaba was able to inspire them towards peace. In aspects where they were really antagonistic themselves, it would bring them back to the agenda. So it delivered on peace. And what happened? In reality, in that particular elections, it won 70+ percent of the vote. It was a Northwest Southeast alliance to deliver that vote. It was huge for Sierra Leone. It shows that democracy can deliver. It shows that promises can deliver. I remember in 2007, when we were moving towards the elections, Campaign for Good Governance erected a very big billboard at Congo Cross. Then again, we begin to wonder that, yes, democracy must deliver its dividend. And we needed electricity, we needed water, and we needed good roads. I remember BBC picked up that agenda and put it on their website, and it became the talk of the town. The election became an election of discourse. Discourse around roads, discourse around electricity. When the new government came to power in 2007, they made it an agenda item. So citizens must not relent. Yes, people are very disillusioned with what's happening, but we must not relent. It is our role and our responsibility to make these demands for politicians. What I see today, what is filling the void is what Reverend articulated very clearly. What is filling the void is sponsoring violence, because they know that when they talk to X and say, this person is against your tribe, it spurs up some sensitivity within the individual. The individual becomes emotive and ready for tension. That is not the discussion on elections. The discussion on elections is about what do I hope to see in the next 5 years. The regime that is coming to power, what will change in my life and what will change for the benefit of this country. Poverty is no longer fashionable. In an era of globalization, we don't want next governments to come to power. We are in an economic crisis, say what you may. Whoever is coming to power needs to articulate an economic trajectory to transform this country. If not, we are all doomed. You see the way the alliance is losing its value. So we need economic policies that would transcend above what is happening globally. We all know that the aftermath of COVID has put Sierra Leone and other countries, not just Sierra Leone, in a very precarious situation, because the entire supply chain in the world has been distorted. Now, we need leaders who will be able to look at homegrown initiatives, informal systems to transform them and bring economic realities and benefits for the citizens. So we cannot divorce this issue of manifestos. They are critical. We want to hear what would be our fate. We want a country that our lives would be better. And if you ask a question on democratic accountability, that is what is democratic accountability. Because at the end of the day, what happens is that citizens would want to see what you did in your last 5 years and what exactly you want to profile. And what are we going to hold you accountable on when your term comes to an end if you did not tell us what you want to do? So we really need to hear from the political parties. Yes, Tommy said there's a two-horse race. We need to hear from the two lead parties and others. Because there are some policies, when we discuss this, because what we're supposed to be doing is not to discuss theory at the moment. When a panel of this nation sits, we should be interrogating both policies. And again, the growing parties, I don't call them smaller parties, because they have something they bring on the table. When the growing parties to put forward their plans, we might be able to extract some ideas and push and sell it to them. The Citizens Manifesto is also out. Civil society led by IGL has done that. We should be able to muster and mobilize support and ideas? For me, that is accountability. Because in the final analysis, when you don't have a plan, that is when you begin to muster violence. That is when you begin to consider how you can shut civil society down, because we'll be talking anyway.
Right.
That is when you begin to critically close down accountability institutions, because you don't have a vision to deliver.
Let's quickly listen to the precursory remark of Reverend James Lahai from National Elections Watch. You know, I'm just trying to establish contact with the two political parties to apparently tell Sierra Leoneans why they've not been able to publish their manifesto yet, but soon would speak to CDI at Tunis, who is the National Publicity Secretary for the opposition All People's Congress Party, and Mohamed Rahman Soare, who is the communications leader for the Sierra Leone People's Party in the campaign. He doubles as the Minister of Information and Communications. But quickly, Reverend James Lahai, how concerned is the National Elections Watch that 48 days to the June 24th polls, we've not been able to see political manifestos from any of the political parties? Their policies have not been communicated in a comprehensive manner for Sierra Leoneans to make informed decisions. How concerned is new?
We are very concerned because though Marcella and other speakers are saying that we are making gains, this attitude is like speaking differently. This attitude is like amplifying the fact that political parties no longer have regard for what the people feel, because they will always have their way. If you look at the 2023 political circle activities, you have several things that were injected into the circle that were big surprises and things nobody thought would happen. And these things have happened, and they hold, and this is what we are working towards. Less than a year to the elections, a major change in our electoral was injected. From the first past the post to the district block proportional representation system. And as citizens, we accepted it because there was no major resistance to say, no, we can't accept this. Because how can we start a political circle with one system of elections, and then midway we switch to another one almost in the opposite? And this is coming in the background where we have started to make some gains. Remember, in 2018, though there were street rallies, Reverend is calling them carnivals, because they are more like carnivals, actually. But there was effort on the part of political parties to go to communities and talk to people. People started questioning the issue of voting for people they've never seen. And you saw people going in my community. It's a very hard to reach community. Political parties went there with the candidates. That was a very big game. And now the PR system has come where the face of the candidates no longer matters. It's the political party. So that's a minus. And then also, there was this issue of the midterm census. At a time when there had been no plan for a census, looking at all documents, all policies, ranging from the manifestos of the ruling government to the statements of the president to the parliament, to the strategic plan of even Statistics Sierra Leone. But then it just came. and it went through, and that was going to cause a chaos had the Electoral Commission not be wise enough to consider a win-win situation by using the 2015 census data and the 2021 census data to determine the allocation of seats to districts.
How do we link all of that at this point to the fact that political parties have not been able to publish their manifestos? But just before you continue, I think I've been able to establish link with the communications lead for the 2023 campaign of the Syrian People's Party, Mohamed Rahman Soare, who doubles as Minister of Information and Communications, to just quickly tell us what is holding the SLPP manifesto. Mr. Minister, good evening, and thank you for joining us on AYV on Sunday.
Thank you very much, Samuel. This looks like an ambush, but in the interest of the people of Sierra Leone, I'm going to, I was literally dragged out of a meeting to respond to this inquiry.
Thank you.
So, two things. The SLPP had a last manifesto as a result of wide-ranging consultations across the country with ordinary citizens ranging from Okada riders, market women, professional associations, and all of that, right? So we had that. That is why we called it the People's Manifesto. It spoke to the aspirations of the ordinary men and women. Where we are now, we have also been consulting. We have met at the consultative conference at the party. The manifesto is being put together. It's led by no less a person than the multidisciplinary J.J. Safar, former Minister of Finance, and now Chief Minister. So that is work in progress. Nobody gave us a deadline for the publication of the manifesto. We're working on it. It's work in progress, and you can be sure that it will, when finally out, it will speak to the collective aspirations of Sierra Leoneans. It will clearly speak on the gains we made in the last 5 years and what the new commitments are, which Sierra Leoneans can definitely bet on and be sure it won't bounce at all.
So the manifestos are always a document that contain your comprehensive plans as political parties. The fact that the SLPP manifesto is yet to be out, and we have barely 48 days to the June polls. Some Sierra Leoneans are concerned on, what are we going to vote on? Or are we going to get the manifestos a few days to elections where people would not be able to digest, people would not be able to investigate those promises and how they will be delivered and voted on?
This is a great question. Just how I wish you were to put this down to parties that are aspiring to lead. The SLPP has a track record to run on. It's common knowledge that for most of the commitments we made in 2018, we have been able to fulfill them. Yes, we agree. There are challenges. We still have some miles to cover. So they already know who we are. They know the values we stand for, the core values of the SLPP, a united, peaceful, and progressive nation where every Sierra Leonean will have equal access to jobs, to opportunities, and all of that. So they know us. It is those who are aspiring to replace us that should have been in a hurry to put forward the manifesto. Ours is work in progress already. But however, that is not to say, we are not taking it seriously. The very fact that it's led by the Chief Minister, who was chairman last time around, gives you, should speak enough that this is work in progress, and soon a manifesto will be published in good time for Sierra Leoneans to be able to dissect it. But in the meantime, let Sierra Leoneans judge us on the basis of our record, our 5-year record. We have been able to do things that no Sierra Leonean government has done since independence. We have been able to do things even in the midst of the twin shocks of COVID and the Russia-Ukraine war. We have been able to do a lot of heavy lifting in extremely difficult circumstances. So you could judge us on that as you await the publication of the manifesto, which definitely is going to speak to the collective aspirations of Sierra Leoneans and the Sierra Leone they envisage in the next couple of years.
I know you have to run back to your meeting. You mentioned earlier, no deadline was given to any political party for the publication of their manifestos. But in the interest of good initiative, good policies, and getting votes from Sierra Leoneans, how soon are we expecting the SLPP's manifesto?
I wish I had the privilege of whispering to the ears of the Chief Minister before taking this interview. But I can guarantee you, because I'm privy to it, 2 weeks ago, final consultations were held. The manifesto will be published pretty soon. Pretty soon. But already His Excellency had given us a peep into it. He has said he is going to consolidate the gains we have made together in the free quality education. We will have to emphasize mainstream agriculture as a new thing to do, because the president is very keen on ensuring that rural unions are able to feed themselves, right? They are able to grow what they eat and eat what they grow. So many things. Already you have an insight. If this were a leakage, it is a leakage that's already out there for rural unions to think about. He is very concerned about job creation for young people. So the key issues are out there. But the manifesto will officially be published, and like all other things, SLPP, it will be very consultative. It will be made public, and we will encourage as much debate about the manifesto as we possibly could garner.
Thank you very much, Mohammed Rahman Swari, Minister of Information and Communication, who doubles as the communications lead for the SLPP 2023 campaign. We're also trying to establish link now with CD Yaya Tunis, who is the National Publicity Secretary for the Opposition All People's Congress Party, to share with us to give us some insights into the preparation of the party's manifesto ahead of the June 24th polls. When you were making your submission, I asked a question about the things you've mentioned, the happenings over time, the direct link between them and the manifesto as we head to the June 24th polls. But I think, I have to hold you that we've been joined by CDI Tunis, who is on the phone there, who is the National Publicity Secretary of the Opposition All People's Congress Party. Cynthia, good evening, and thank you very much for accepting to speak to us in such a short notice. But just quickly, Sierra Leoneans are concerned that the APC, like all other political parties, is yet to publish its manifesto. Why is that? What is happening?
Well, let us understand, Samuel. First of all, thank you very much for getting me on. This has clearly been a call from many Sierra Leoneans, but let us understand that the elections goes through processes. And Dr. Samura Kamara just officially became the candidate of the APC on the 1st of May. And on the 2nd, he traveled. So there is no way we could have published a manifesto when he was not a candidate. So now that he has become a candidate, as soon as he returns, we'll focus on, putting out our manifesto, because we want the people of this country to clearly see what we have to offer. We have to market our own programs. We have to let them understand how we're going to change their lives and how we're going to end the economic problems, the social problems that we are faced with, and also how we unite the country and ensure that we create opportunity for every Sierra Leonean. So those things are embedded in our manifesto. But of course, like I stated, we could not have published a manifesto when officially we did not have a candidate. So
are you saying that the manifesto is ready?
Yes, the manifesto is ready. We have been ready for a very long time. The manifesto committee has long presented a draft, which we have also worked on. It is finalized, but of course, like I stated, we were waiting for Dr. Samura Kamara to go through the nomination process. Unfortunately, and fortunately also, just after the nomination process, he traveled out of the country to attend the Commonwealth meeting that you must have become aware of now. And that meeting also was very important because it borders on democracy, it borders on rule of law, and it borders also on...
Hello. All right, we'll continue to establish a link there with CDI at Tunis. Unfortunately, we have a very poor reception with the network. He was talking about the manifesto of the APC, and he was telling us that the manifesto is ready, waiting for publication. I just wanted to ask him about the areas of priority for the APC as a political party in the manifesto. All right, so Sidi, welcome again. Now, you were saying the manifesto is ready. If you don't want to, don't give us the specifics. But what are the areas you're considering or you've considered to be priority areas for the nation?
First, well, we have, it is categorized. We have short-term, immediate programs. We have the medium and long-term. For short-term, clearly, we have to focus on the economy. We have to also focus on those social issues, health. We have to look at how we improve on education, agriculture, of course, short-term, how we be able to reduce the prices of basic commodities, the prices of fuel, and also focus on dealing with the high rise in the dollar as against our currency. So these are the areas that we have to immediately look at. And the most important probably of all is the issue of bringing the country together. Samuel, except if you don't want to be honest, our country is more deeply divided than it has ever been along political lines, along tribal and regional lines. And if we are to improve, if we are to develop, and if we are to, aspire to cater for every Sierra Leonean, we cannot do those if we do not have a united nation.
One thing that is very clear, Sidi, just quickly before we let you go, is the fact that all of the issues you've mentioned, every other political party that might want to publish manifesto would have to capture all of those things. How would they address the economy, the social issues of education, health, and other things? Does the APC manifesto that is yet to be published, does it give a strategy as to how you would be able to implement and actualize those policies or promises in your manifesto?
It does, and that is where the difference comes in, because we have clear and doable strategies, not just fake and bogus promises, but clear and doable strategies. That is why we categorize our manifesto into short, medium, and long term, because there are those, strategies that you cannot achieve within the short term. You have to, tailor it to go into the medium and then definitely in the long term. But our strategies are doable, they are concise, and they are very clear. And once we roll out the manifesto within the shortest possible time, the people of this country will clearly see where we want to take Sierra Leone to.
All right. Thank you very much, Sidi Yaya Tunis, National Publicity Secretary for the Opposition All People's Congress Party, speaking to us on the line there. Reverend, quickly, let me allow you to respond to the question of the direct link between the happenings you've mentioned, the census, the change of electoral system in the middle of the game, as you put it, and the lack of or the absence of political manifestos at this point.
All these contribute to instability in the minds of the voters, not knowing exactly what is expected of them when it comes to their participation in the electoral process. The absence of the manifesto from the political parties at this point is also a manifestation that the manifestos really don't matter. It's all about, just going to tell people that we are the best. But by the way, it's good Tunis has given us tidbits of what will be in their manifesto. And that's not going to be any different from what the Slpp will be coming with and any of the other political parties. So the issue here actually, I think the focus should not be so much on the manifesto, though it is good because that is how you will take to bring them to accountability. But it's about the character of the individuals that are vying for the leadership of this country. What's like their disposition like? What's their conduct? How can we judge them? You know, we need to interrogate the individuals that want to take these positions, just like we'll be interested in the manifestos that they bring. Because we have not in the past had any robust mechanism of actually letting these manifestos be explained to the public and how it's going to be actualized. Just like you asked that question to Tunis. They will tell you they will be doing this, they will be doing this, they will be doing that. But how are they going to do it? It's always going to be absent. And that's where the confusion is. Anybody can tell you they can do anything. You can break the sky. As long as I'm not obliged to tell you how I'm going to break it. Tomorrow I come and I tell you, I tried, I went up the palm tree, I was up the mountain, but you know, the sky seemed to be moving away. So next time, I will try another strategy. Right. So you see, this all boils down to the respect that our politicians have for the people of this country.
All right.
As a people, we have become so complacent. We have become, you know, we seem to forget too soon. And that is why you would see, just after the election, the very strong supporters will be the first to start to cry that things are not working the way it should be working.
All right. Marcella, quickly, let me hear you on basically the things that have been submitted by both political parties here tonight with regards to their manifestos and how that will translate into actions and get Sierra Leone has to vote on them.
After the both responses, I became even much more worried.
How so?
You know, you just ask about accountability. And one of the fundamental pillars of good governance is responsiveness. And Reverend James Lai just mentioned about complacency. And that's why I'm worried, because it seems as if complacency is setting to our democracy. But so let me mention this. Manifestos are not a wish list. Everything in Sierra Leone is a priority.
Right.
But we need to look at those sectors that can realistically accelerate growth. Because that is the phase we need to move into development. Since 2002, for the post-conflict reconstruction, and that was when we thought that a national agenda would be useful. Because then with a national transformation agenda, which will be highly consultative and cross-party, when political parties want to develop their own agendas, which we call manifestos, they will have a bite from the national agenda. And then us as citizens will be able to measure to what extent we are party A or party B able to pick from the national agenda and deliver. But unfortunately, the Vision 2025 did not translate. Political parties, after the poverty reduction strategy won, political parties deviated and wanted a self-centered plan to actually take the accolades as the party. So you find out that it has been disjointed. It's very repetitive. You find out that records are not there. Record keeping is a problem. We are not following a pathway. So that when a new government comes, it takes another direction. Totally lost cause of the order. Sidi mentioned that the flag bearer is away. One of the things we need to note that even before choosing a flag bearer, the political party must have a direction. That's what is called the manifesto. The political party manifesto. And we look at who the flag bearers are and say, based on these policies that we have put in place as a party, X is the most suitable person to drive this policy. and by extension translate it to the country. And then when the candidate comes to power, the candidate tease out, because the political party manifesto will be big and you only have 5 years to deliver, the candidate tease out 1, 2, 3 top priorities that by the time I leave office in 5 years or my first term, I would have been able to deliver on these expectations. That's how manifestos work. So when you choose candidates, you also choose candidates on the manifesto. How, for example, if we do a quick investigation right now, Vox Pop, on the number of councillors who have gone into the nomination list, or the MPs who have gone into nomination list, and ask them, what's your role and responsibility as a councillor? I bet a number of them have only taken symbol without knowing why they are coming to office. And that's where we begin to miss it. And so this conversation is very important. And I think the political parties must understand that it's very forward-looking. We should not lose sight of why we need to put forward an agenda for the next 5 years. And I believe such an agenda has to be consultative. I don't have any problems if political parties are articulating the same thing, because definitely you're speaking to the context.
Right.
And that agenda must be context realistic. We look at our own unique problems as Sierra Leoneans and look at strategies as to how to address those problems. There are no there are no qualms if they are the same, because we are speaking to the same context. But let it be consultative and let it be result-oriented.
Right. Lawyer Tommy, how does the absence of a political manifesto, how would that affect the quality of governance?
I don't think we've ever had a case, at least since 1996, where we have had a government without a manifesto. There's always a manifesto. I think
the timing.
We all agree on the fact that we always have, we have had party manifestos as well as what seems to be like national development plans. From Agenda 2025, we had in 2013 the Conference on Transformation and Development, right? That produced a document that was supposed to provide a blueprint. I would even argue that the TRC report is a blueprint for development. So we have always had plans, blueprints. It's a question is we haven't diligently, scrupulously, implemented them. And so our business, obviously, our citizens, generally, is to ask why, and perhaps and to hold political parties at this point, and then government after elections, to account, to make sure that what they have promised. And the thing about promises or manifestos, Samuel, that they've got to be smart, right? Like we say in project management, you've got to be very, very clear, specific about what you want to do, understand? And what you want to do has to be measured. So when, for example, IGR was doing the biometer, they looked at, you said you will do this. Have you done it? How many of that did you say you would do? Have you done it? It's got to be achievable. See, they talked about the achievable plans that they are working on, right? It's got to be realistic. But most importantly, for our purpose, and this is why I've made the economic point, it is time-bound. It's every 5 years. Tell us that these things we can achieve in 5 years. And in year one, this is our funding stream. This is how we're going to fund it. Currently, NRA, for example, generates X amount of money. That is not enough to do this. What are we going to do? We're going to review the laws, and by this review, we expect that this review may lead to this. We're going to revise the contract. And then when we meet here, we are interrogating what you have indicated as a funding plan. It's easy to say we want to fix X, Y, Z. That's so easy to say. But when I talked about disillusionment with democracy, it's in terms of really economic gains. We have made huge progress as a country in terms of civil and political rights. Multiplicity of radio stations, freedom, all the civil liberties. There are still challenges there and there, clearly, but we've made progress in that regard. When it comes to economic prosperity, dealing with poverty, addressing key development challenges, that's what we are, which is why I think the next election, for the next 30, 40 years, we should talk about civil and political rights every day, but our focus really is about combating poverty, dealing with all the issues that affect us. It is unacceptable in this day and age that you still have your countrymen who do not have access to potable water, to electricity, access to a lot of basic services that you take for granted. That's what we should be focused on, and we cannot, no one party can achieve that, which is why, again, I'm really looking at the cohesion plan that each of these parties will have. So I listened to both Messrs. Soare and Tunis. The truth is that these plans should have been out by now. A few weeks to the election, we should be debating what party A has proposed to do in terms of our economy. That's what we should be talking about. We shouldn't be talking about what they plan to tell us. It's late. And by the way, I have to go back to an earlier point I made about the fact that you still have a country that is largely divided along party lines. Our politics is ethno-regional, no doubt, but you still have a good percentage of people, hopefully, including first-time voters, who'll be interested in policies, who'll be interested in this camp. The reason we need those is when we have platforms like this, we interact with those policies, those manifestos, we can make, in a way, an assessment of who has, and there's nothing wrong for us or even the media to say on the economy, which party has a better plan. On women, on social cohesion, on things like that. That's what we should be doing to help perhaps hold the political parties to account. But even before the elections, they can tweak their manifestos, right, based on the feedback. And there's nothing wrong for them to even consult with opinion leaders, with civil society groups, with community people to make sure that their ideas are reflected in this plan ultimately. He talked about the Citizens Manifesto. That's a resource document, I would argue. But that plan has to be very clear in terms of what you can do, what you have. Right now, what do we have? I'd like to see a manifesto that says, as a country, this is what we currently have. But there's a whole lot that we don't have. How do we address that gap, right?
But Lawyer Tommy, with that belief of yours, we have majority of the voters have decided, I mean, along political lines, based on how the country is. How then, what do you consider to be the biggest militating factor against us voting on policies? Go back to 2018, the Citizens Manifesto said Sierra Leoneans were ready to vote on policies and all of that, but then from the results, it didn't turn out that way. So what is the biggest militating factor
So here? let's even you say you are critical of the previous administration, right? You may have argued that the economy was bad, we're in austerity, we are XYZ. Dr. Samuel Kamara still pulled more than 48% of the votes, right? So it's just, I agree with you. You still have, that's the point I'm making.
Right.
You still have that. If you did say there was for any reason by-election today in Kinema, Kailan, you would almost easily determine the outcome. Same for McKinney. So the point I'm making is the country, and there's nothing wrong with that. Okay, there may be something wrong with that, but let me correct myself.
Go ahead.
But what I wanted to say is it is not unique to Sierra Leone. Let's don't be too hard on ourselves. In the US, you have what? Blue states, red states. In the UK, you have conservative. So let's don't pretend like this is unique to Sierra Leone. What I think we're trying to do is those who sit in the middle, the 5%, the 10%, the 15%, we're trying to grow that number. And the only thing, in my opinion, one of the things that may grow that percentage of people who will think along policy lines is education. When you get liberated, I'm sorry, to be honest, I had Marcella say, even before the party chooses or elects a flag bearer, the party has a plan, a manifesto. That manifesto now informs the party members who meet at the delegates convention to choose who can best deliver the party's plan. It doesn't work. That's why it should work. Yes. It is the ideal, right? The odd is what odd versus what is. The reality is, before that convention, we all don't tie, saying that this power the boogie couldn't care less. That is the reality. Hopefully, with education, and by the way, glad that you have asked this question. I have said, Marcella and I were in Zambia talking about democracy at the Democracy Summit. We agreed in one of the side event, that democracy as we know it has not and does not automatically translate into economic prosperity and cohesion. One thing that I have for, one proposal that I have for Sierra Leone, and I'm happy to go all the way with this, I don't think our current political system is working. Any system that potentially excludes 50% of this population because that group or grouping has lost an election is not going to work. So we're talking about cohesion and all of that. It's part of the, I mean, we only talk about it because of the political systems. I mean, it's a major problem. It's a political system. You can also argue that it's got to do with the leadership, right? It's a leadership issue, it's a political system issue, but I think the biggest part of it is a political issue. For me, I think for cohesion, we now have to review our current political system, create a national council where every district contributes to that council ends up forming the government that runs our country, so that that council, which represents every district, every ethnicity. In Freetown, we have Creoles in there. In the north, you have Tim Limbas, both like that. And then from among that council, they vote. So, and you now say you can't. There are ways of making sure that at the end of the day, we don't say Namendeman government is or Natiman government. I tell you, let no one fool you. The next election, no matter who that election produces, whether it's President Bill or Dr. Samar Kamara, one half of this country is always going to tag that government with a certain name. That's something that we have to be alive to, and we have to find a way of dealing with that. No matter what you say, part of the problem, major part of the problem is our political system.
Marcella, I see you wanted to come in just before I come to Reverend.
By the time Tommy was closing, because he was going to, are we having a democratic deadlock? That was well, by the time it was closing, he changed his argument to build a system that works. And that is it. One of the things, some of us as democracy, we espouse democracy. We believe that all the other forms of government have failed, and democracy is what we want to work. And so whenever I sit where somebody is saying democracy is not working, I become jittery, because where all else have failed, a system that espouses my views, my inputs, cohesiveness, consultation, that is the system I favor. Now, when we're talking about the ideal situation, and how poverty is no longer fashionable. These are the things that we need to bring in. And let me tell you, that's 8 to 10% who always decide, you know, the votes in Sierra Leone. They are a very critical group. They are very critical, and they are a very informed group. Many of the people who still vote traditionally and to say whether or not, educated people are among. So I don't buy the arguments that it's education that liberates them. You have elites who are captured. Their hearts and minds are already captured too. When you say it's green, it's red for them. They are educated and they are captured too. What we need are liberal minds who would think that this particular system that we are in, the current political system, would not deliver anything to this country. We will continue to be poor and poorer. If we run a country on reward, we run a country without a plan. And that was what Reverend was articulating. When he talked about the midterm census and he talked about changing elections in the middle of, the electoral calendar, middle or tail end of the electoral calendar. That means there were no plans. Because if there were rigid plans, you look at those plans and you deliver on those plans. So yes, democracy works. I don't buy the arguments that democracy doesn't work. What doesn't work is that those who are at the end of things, they tweak it in their own favor because they know that the principles that democracy espouses, accountability, responsiveness, consensus building, they know that when they push those things, they are held accountable and they don't want it. So they make sure that they introduce. Now what we are seeing, a pattern has been introduced where we will have routine elections with no question. That is what they want to introduce, and we will not allow that.
With the absence of manifestos.
Yes, absence. No, we will call for manifestos.
No, quickly, I'll be quick.
Yes,
I hope nobody leaves this place thinking that I have said democracy doesn't work.
No, you didn't say that.
I'm glad you said that. That's not my point. You can have democracy based on what? Popular suffrage, right? But still the structures, the democratic structures, are tweaked to reflect the country's social, cultural, our mix, our diversity. Let's make sure that the one, what is this, a one man wins all or winner takes all. Right. It's not working. It's never going to work in our context. I totally agree. It's never going to work. We've got to fix that.
All right.
Inclusivity has to be the watchword. Deliver on basic social services. At the end of the day, I tell you, it doesn't matter who is that. For most of us, if not all of us sitting here, it really doesn't matter who runs State House. I've never worked for the government of Sierra Leone since I finished university more than 20 years ago, right? The point is that what every Sierra Leonean wants, right, is in addition to democracy that we're all crazy about, is about making sure that your basic needs are met. All right.
Quickly, Reverend, so Lawyer Tommy submitted earlier that the biggest contributor to getting Sierra Leoneans to vote on policies has to be education. But Marcella also submitted that those who are already captured, I mean, along this regional political divide, are also educated people. That you have elite there. So then, how do we ensure that?
The argument actually is, what kind of education are we talking about? Of course, the formal education becomes the foundation. But when it comes to raising the level of civic consciousness, we are talking about a completely different type of education. And that is where citizenship education comes in. Commonly we call it civic education. And that is where the challenge is.
Absolutely.
And interestingly, it is in politics that everybody runs to. Whether they are qualified or not, everybody runs into it, and everybody is a politician. The moment he says, I want to be a councillor or a member of parliament. But of course, somebody might say this is too bookish. But I go back to reflect on early in the 5th century BC, Plato has stated this. He said, until philosophers are kings, or the kings and princes of this world have the spirit and power of philosophy, and political greatness and wisdom meet in one, and those commoner natures who pursue either to the exclusion of the other are compelled to stand aside, cities will never have rest from their evils. In essence, people who understand what politics is, they are the ones that we expect to see take the lead to ensure that the governance of the nation is assured. And the things that the law is talking about, we call them the dividends of democracy. So it's not about democracy not working. It's actually about the people who are in it not being able to produce those dividends.
Thank you.
Because we need to have them. But of course, the foundation is that when you anchor it on the rule of law, that people can enjoy their rights, and of course, also behaving responsibly, you are expecting all of these things to happen. So we need to take a stance. We need to take a position. But he said something, and that's an idea that I have always espoused.
Which is?
In terms of how we share or distribute power in the country. Probably he's coming from a different angle, but I have looked at it from, I call it the national character principle. In Nigeria, it might not be the best of examples, but they call it the federal character principle. In section 14 of their 1999 constitution, it is stated there clearly, no one group will dominate the governance of the country, whether it's at the federal level or at the state level. So it's there as a constitutional provision. And Sierra Leone should be looking in that direction to say, we're not going to give what you might call a field day to the person who is voted in. He is regulated by law to say, when you come in, 5% of those that are going to be in your cabinet should come from this region. This 5% should come from that region. So when you have that kind of mix, the things that we see happening now, the fights, the tension, everybody pushing, and I always bring the analogy of the polygamous home. When my stepmother is in the kitchen, I'm worried that I'm not going to get enough food on the table. But if you have a way to regulate the situation, that whether it's my stepmother or my real mother, everybody gets the benefits of what the father provides, then that kind of home will be peaceful. And that's the same idea or mentality we should inject into national politics, where we ensure everybody has a stake. So we avoid this thing about the winner taking everything. And that is one thing that is troubling us. Because somebody assumes if it's not my party in power, we're going to be struggling for the next 5 years. But when we can address that with equal opportunities provided for everybody, and then we can go to what lawyer said, it does not matter who goes to State House. But until that is done, people are going to be concerned about who goes to State House. So you will see people fighting, people putting every kind of resistance to ensure it is their own person. I know Samuel, if he goes there, he'll remember Reverend. But whether it is Samuel or not, if the regulations are there, and we don't just base them on wishful thinking, and that is where I have a challenge with what our politicians have started with, the absence of a direction. And it's the same, because the laws are not there to guide them as to what they should do, they are now even bringing it to manifestos, which we've always used to say, okay, this should guide, tell us what they want to bring on the table. But now they're taking, tactically they're taking it off.
So if you, the experts, have submitted that what we have is a fledgling democracy, then with the absence of political manifestos, how worse does it make it? Or
you are allowing the situation to deteriorate further. It's like you have erected the structure, and for it to be a complete structure, you need the windows, you need the doors. But if the doors are not there, the windows are not there, the house is not painted. Honestly, there are several other challenges that you're going to face if you choose to enter that house. Even though somebody might say, well, it has a roof, all the walls are intact, but there are certain things are not there. And we must not encourage this kind of situation. Two things from the responses of our politicians. The one said a deadline was not given to them. Honestly, I wish he had not said that. And the other one said, it is dependent on this person. That is why it's not out. We want to see our political parties as institutions, national institutions that are responsive to the needs of the people, not based on the whims and caprices of any person. One person goes in, another person goes out, the institution stays. And that is how we must look at our institutions in this country, so that it does not matter whether it is Reverend or somebody else. The National Commission for Democracy continues. It's the same that we expect from all other national institutions, and political parties are national institutions, and they must be accountable to the people, and they must avoid excuses that honestly cannot stand the test of time. So please, politicians, you are to shape our political will, and we expect you not just about the things that you say. People can sit one day based on their mood. They say one thing and the next moment it will change. But when it is documented, following due processes, we can always take that and use it as, well, not as a weapon against you, but to remind you about the things that you've said. And that is exactly what we want for the people of this country. If they cannot give it to us, the citizens must make a demand. And our voices are being presented tonight to the politicians to say, it is a must. Give us your manifesto. Tell us why we must vote for you and not the other person.
All right. You know, let's quickly join Slpp Kamara in our studio to give us what some of our followers on Facebook have been sending in. Slpp.
All right. Thank you, Samuel. And the first message I will take tonight is from Stephen Nyali, who says, when PPRC said, let us force politicians to tell us their plans in town hall meetings or school fields, we the citizens said, no, we want to dance in the street. And again, Stephen, he says, how many people will have time to read 200 to 300-page manifesto? He answered, 1%. That's why we need those guys to come out and explain and answer difficult questions in a town hall. We are tired of street dancing. And Yoki Mori Musa says, kudos, Marcella, for your view on the presentation, because we need this country to go forward, not backward. I think these two political parties' manifestos should work properly as people want in this country. And there are many complementary messages for all of the panelists today. And I think this shows that the people have missed, especially Marcella. You need to come always so that the people will hear from you. And Dr. Tonia Musa says, Manifesto hardly manifests in quality or quantity. And Lamin Denke says, CSOs have failed us to come out to hold elections bodies and government accountable on critical issues. The people have made up their minds despite manifestos. And Samuel Akinbade says, all parties that have won elections after the war have worked to the script of their manifestos. The question is, to what extent have their manifestos affected the populace, and how far have the population helped them after election to realize these ideals which manifestos are? And Faya Musa says, this time around, we are going to vote based on performance, character, values, and realistic manifestos. And Abtsamba Kamara says, please let's use the PRSP again, because all these manifestos are not working for our nation. And the last message I will take for today is a question to CSOs. They say, where do the powers of civil society stop? Are they just there to talk to us or talk about the issues? Does their power go beyond that? What I have seen over the years is CSO's accountability has mainly been in the media, where government is less serious about what you say. SLPP has just scored a gold on CSOs that they don't have a time ban to submit a manifesto. So back to you, Samuel.
Thank you very much, Salifu Cheno Kamara, for taking some of the messages that have been sent on Facebook by our followers. Now, let me come back to you. I'll start off with you, Reverend, just quickly. With the contributions of our followers, some of our followers on Facebook, and with the submissions that all of you have made here. Now, if we are to lay the tracks to advancing our democracies, where we have comprehensive plans and policies in the form of manifestos, say 6 months to elections latest, how do we go about laying those tracks so we are able to, in time, do all of the investigations, the interrogations, and probe into their plans, into their policies, and how they are going to implement them?
Thank you very much, Samuel. You see, I would not want to agree with the fact that we do not have the right laws. I believe that we have the requisite laws to let this country work. The issue here is the implementation of our laws is where we always miss the issue. The manifestos might be very good. Following up on the manifestos, maybe the leader might genuinely want to go by those manifestos, but he is not the implementer. And the checks and balances that should be in place to ensure that somebody who is like redirecting what's expected to be done is corrected by some other institution is where we have the gap. I will try to explain that using the local councils. The bringing back local councils was a big blessing for this country, where government was now at the door of the people, and the people can now participate in the governance of their country through their councils. If you go through the Local Government Act and see the connections between the councils and the various institutions, you see clearly that the basis for checks and balances is laid. But these are flouted by people who are in authority who should ensure that things happen. For example, in the Local Government Act, we have the ward committees. Every ward is expected to have a committee that should be the development engine of that ward. And any development going to that ward must involve the full participation of the ward committee as it is enshrined in the Local Government Act. So that you want to go and build a school, the plan for the school, how you will be implementing the ward committee should be part of that. It started working, and then it was flouted. And those who started flouting it was not the INGOs, it was NACSA. And you know, this thing is very interesting. First, the councillors started to do things without the ward committees, and there was no resistance. And then the chairman and the CA started doing things without the councillor. And the councillor cannot go back to the ward committee because he had already started, and so the people are no longer used to taking these things to them to be part of the decisions. This is one way people own projects. This is one way people believe that, in fact, they are participating in governance. But then, the leadership will always flout those good policies. Because let me tell you, Samuel, our poverty would I like to be practical. We all will be at the same level. And then somebody would come into governance. And immediately, there's a big change in the status and affluence of this person who has come into governance. So assuming the checks and balances were strong, I want to believe that this affluence would have been spread across what's supposed to be in communities. Because it is that which should go to the communities that is going to the individual. And therefore, the individual is becoming more affluent than the community is expected to be serving.
Right. Marcella, what should we concentrate on? How should we get the political parties to own up and at least give us a comprehensive plan months ahead of elections?
You see, now I'm caught between, I want to follow up on certain conversation that Tommy laid and Reverend, and then Reverend James, like, you know, I've already put so nicely the decentralization plan on the table. And I also want to pick up a few of the messages Salif read. But let me say thank you so much to the Texas. It shows that people want to hear policies.
Right.
I mean, I don't have problems if people want to sing and dance democracy. We are a traditional society. Our culture is important. We can also write about when they sing and dance democracy, they also put in messages around what they want. There's no problem if people want to sing and dance democracy in their own way, but we should not forget about the policies. Don't think that dancing is wrong. Right. I prefer people dancing than fighting. But then the policies, and a number of the texts articulate that. I want to congratulate them for that. But Tommy and Reverend, yeah, we have to Reverend on the table. This panel is blessed. This is blessed. It's a blessed panel. But you mentioned about looking at a national governance system that is inclusive. I tell you, we are reinventing the conversation. This conversation was had in 2004 when we looked at over-centralization of power. And if over-centralization of power was put forward as one of the foremost reasons for the civil conflict, how can we diffuse and decentralize? And that was the response. Decentralization was the answer to what you mentioned. What you call federalism in Nigeria is decentralization in Sierra Leone. So what should happen is that the resources, as Reverend James Lai says, that are sitting in the hands of individuals, no, central government should play a monitoring role. Resources should go to the local councils, and that is the development engine to the people. And so all the political contestations we are having in the center should not be there. Now we begin to interrogate the national budget. The national budget sits here in Freetown. No, what should happen in Freetown is policies. In terms of resources, is to go to the community. So we have the Bo City Council and the District Council in Bo looking at what their immediate needs are, and resources are allocated for those needs. And equally, the people should be inspired to also have homegrown resources to function the council. I mean, so when we are talking that, oh, until we have a system, no. People are sitting on the policies. They are not implementing them because they know that if those policies are implemented, opportunities and power will be taken from them. So what we are having every day is over-centralization of state authority, resources, and power. We have done this in 2004 when we instituted local councils. That was the essence of decentralization. And for me, I think that's why I think going forward, I started Campaign for Good Governance sits at the Budget Advocacy Network. And I started this conversation at BAN to say that when we are planning for the next cycle, we need to interrogate the national budget. Too much money is sitting in Freetown. No, the money should go to the councils. 22 local councils should be adequately financed. And then you begin to see people moving back to the communities, people moving back to the cities out of Freetown. Everybody is coming to Freetown because opportunities sit here, and it shouldn't be the case. So that is the conversation, my colleagues. Let's try as best as possible to amplify the issues of decentralization, because that was the response. It was widely consultative, and people say bring back the local councils. But what's happening now? The local councils are not productive enough because they do not have the necessary resources to finance them. The next point, somebody says that where do the powers of CSO stop? And when Slpp read the message, I just put all of that in perspective. We have powers to sanction, not just to talk. Civil society has power because we feel the brunt of it. And let me unpack very quickly. Let me unpack this meaning of the demos, the people. Because many a times, politicians think that the people are there, and no, they are part of the people. You find out that when they leave power, then they begin to realize what it means that you should be buying water. 55,000, the bottled water. I grew up in Freetown and I was drinking from the tap. In fact, that is why, in my opinion, a number of MDAs should be closed. These have not yielded no dividend. Some of these MDAs should be subsumed to other agencies because the state is wasting resources, because they are not productive. A number of those agencies should be critically evaluated, and because they are not productive, they should be subsumed and let money go to other places. So to be paying people at the end of every month and they are not producing and delivering on citizens' expectation is a downside. And these are all the things we need to talk about. So resources that are meant, let's understand that what we are talking about is not far-fetched. These are taxpayers' money. When I work at the end of every month, the taxes are huge. They are huge. From electricity, and some of the stuff we are calling my attention that now health tax is also included. Do you know that we are paying to one corner to hospital so that it becomes viable? Who monitors that? The taxes are used, it's taxpayers' money. So we have a saying that where the money should be used, where it should go to. And it's not to fund the lifestyle of a politician, no. Of course, I want my politician to look good. Don't feel that I have issues with that, but not at the detriment of the masses. So it is important to put these issues on the agenda. And that is why I want to appeal to the political parties. Let the manifesto speak an agenda issue. So that, remember, the new direction, free quality education was high on the agenda.
Right.
It would have its challenges. I mean, the minister alluded to some of these issues. But then you find out that across the country, everybody knows that the President Bio government has free quality education as top on the agenda. Now, when I've done a number of elections in various contexts, you know, in various continents, as soon as you get into the elections atmosphere, they say, what are the top 3 issues of these elections? Believe you me, you ask me, Marcella, what are the top 3 issues of Sierra Leone elections? I don't know, because I am not feeling it. I'm not hearing the conversation. And we need that conversation, quite honestly, because as we have said on this table, we have all agreed that poverty is no longer fashionable.
All right. Lawyer Tommy, how do we chart a path that would lead to us discussing issues, discussing policies based on what the parties would want to deliver? I mean, how do they plan to solve the crisis or the problems of the monumental abject poverty we've been talking about in Sierra Leone?
I think there are ways we can affect not just the content of those manifestos, but also the discussions on those manifestos. I think one initiative that we have talked about here is the Citizens Manifesto. And the thing I like about that Citizens Manifesto initiative is not just the fact that we are proposing what the next administration to do, but we are also making commitments as citizens, right? Because, and sometimes, you know, as we have all agreed, I hope, on this panel, on delivery of basic services, we have to admit that, of course, there's corruption in public service. There's wastage, right? We are sometimes boxing below our weight. There's a lot more that we could be doing to cut down waste, to you know, fix corruption here and there. But at the end of the day, Samuel, I remember, I think it was in 2013, 2014, when the then minister, a young guy, it was Maligi or something, very passionate about water. I mean, I could hear him on radio, I could meet him in a few meetings. We needed $50 million to fix Freeton's water crisis at the time. We probably need more now than back then.
Right.
Which government is going to just say, you take $50 million and let's forget about pay? So at the end of the day, sometimes, you know, when we, and I have made this point on this program previously, the biggest conversation that we should be having, in addition to holding our government to account, making sure that there's good behavior, their attitudes change, all of that. The biggest conversation is about the economy, about dealing with poverty. So let's talk about illicit capital flow, for example. How do you explain the fact that a company comes in here, spends $2 million, and then ships away $30 million, leaves less than 500,000, and you sit there and still think that they are going to deliver electricity for you? We don't have, let's put it, we are too broke to provide electricity for all of Sierra Leone right now. How do we fix that? We're not going to fix that by just collecting the pittance we collect from NRA. No, it's not going to happen. We have to think about radical ways of creating wealth for this country. It's a broke country. Listen, I have said this. And that's why I really want to see the big ideas in the manifestos that we're talking about. I'll tell you, you see the manifestos and you say the next 5 years, nothing is going to change. Things are going to get worse based on what this put in the manifesto. So we have talked a lot. And the person asked, what else can civil society do beyond talking? Of course, there's a lot that we can do. But ultimately, remember, I'm just a voter like you are. I'm just a citizen like you are. What we have decided to do is to come together as a group or as institutions to speak, to help educate, to hold government to account. But who says it is the job of one organization or 5 organizations or 10 organizations to do that accountability work? Every citizen has a right to participate in the governance of a country. What we have done is to institutionalize it, but it doesn't have to be institutionalized. You can hold your parliamentarian to account. So now on the issue of manifesto, I know ultimately it's going to be about the parties, but I like to see individual candidates. For example, independent candidates, the few that I imagine, or even the parliamentary candidates, right? Local council, mayoral candidates, we need to see their manifestos. What is it that you want to do differently? You understand? But like Marcella said, and I agree absolutely on the issue of decentralization. You may have your plans as a councillor or as a mayoral candidate, as a district council chairman. If the funds are not coming through, and if you're not innovative as well to raise or increase what they call own source revenue, right? It's not going to happen for you. I don't want to make this all about money. There are things that we need money to fix. There are things that our attitudes need to change about. Our behaviors need to change. Let's separate the two and see where the biggest problem lies. I think it's a combination of both. So when we talk about what we need to do differently in terms of our attitudes, in terms of respect for rule of law and respect for human rights, making sure that there's good behavior, let's also look at the practical aspect of how do we create wealth. The problems that we're dealing with, you can't find them in the Arab world or in much of the Arab world. You know why? Because they probably have oil money to fix it. So I'm saying we can raise the same amount of wealth in those countries if we think differently in terms of how we generate revenue for our country.
Absolutely. Reverend, what are, at this point, what are the most critical steps we should take as a nation?
Of course, I will go back to the economy. And I'll put it this way, we have to deliberate in terms of what we get from our resources. These are the things that we are. But the reality has been they are benefiting outsiders more than they are benefiting us.
Absolutely.
So we have to go back to the drawing table and make more demands by being deliberate. If you check the Constitution, looking at our economic objectives, it's clearly stated that we're supposed to harness the resources of this nation in the best interest of the people. But that is what we've not done over time. I'm taking an expression from Achebe. How can you live along the river Niger in this context? Here, in our case, the river Uke, and you still wash your face with spittle. Absolutely. That is the irony of the century. And that is the problem we are facing as a country. And our politicians have not addressed that problem over time. They are interested in the comfort that they receive because of their privileged position. Absolutely. But our politicians in this country, it's high time they started realizing that you are voted into that office because of the people, not just because of yourself. Yes, naturally, automatically, the moment you become president, minister, member of parliament, there are certain things that you benefit from. But let's see such benefits actually going down to the people because you are there on their behalf. And for me, with the manifestos that we are demanding, there should be a portion that speaks to how we address our natural resources and how we can get more from it, and not the other way around. If you go to New York up till now, even though it was in 1972, they are still discussing how we sold the Star of Sierra Leone. And other diamonds that we've gotten from Sierra Leone, they are benefiting other countries, but not us. So we should be looking at a situation wherein our natural resources are not just mined and taken to other countries. How can we add value to them right here in Sierra Leone? We should be talking about those policy arrangements to ensure if somebody comes, bauxite. He just mentioned the where we are. What about iron ore? For Africa, about the largest deposit. And what do we have to show for that? Go to Lonsar and see that community. It's honestly a shame. But it is our politicians who should help change the narrative in that direction.
I agree.
It's not the ordinary man.
Yep.
And we must make a demand. As they present to us their manifestos, they should tell us, in addition to some of the things that I've already mentioned about political tolerance, national unity and cohesion, they should tell us about their agenda regarding our natural resources, how these natural resources can actually benefit us, because that's a constitutional provision. And not to forget, for most of the time we've concentrated on what we're going to do, not how we're doing it. So let's have a national agenda that these politicians, when they come, their manifestos will only tell us about how, which is supposed to be the emphasis. For now, it is what.
Okay.
And we need to move beyond that.
All right.
Probably you might call it my...
Let me have your party shots quickly.
People of this country, Sierra Leoneans, elections are still important to choose our leaders. Use your conscience, vote wisely, so that you not regret that decision for the next 5 years.
All right, Vice Toby?
No, I think it's important that these elections pass peacefully, and that people understand that it's a democracy. We talk about multiplicity of parties, that you have to coexist. We cannot all support the same party. You'll be calling for autocracy. So if you say you believe in democracy, you have to understand that other political parties exist and people have a right to support their political parties. And they don't have to have a reason for supporting any political party. It's just their right to support. Don't question their right to support the political parties they support. What you have to do is to coexist with them and make sure that you comply with the laws of the country and be peaceful in these elections. Political parties, especially the two major political parties, have a responsibility to release their manifestos as soon as possible, perhaps next week, to give all of us a chance to review. For example, we'll be reviewing along a number of lines, along accountability, rule of law. For me, as a personal project, really I like to see what they are going to propose in terms of economy. It's not just the short-term fixes. We have all seen these short-term fixes don't help us. Poverty has been with us since independence. It's getting worse, right? It's because we have not dealt with the economic aspect of it. That's what I like to say, and I hope that after this conversation, they will think seriously about that.
Marcella?
Goma Valley Water Company without water. 21st century, people fetching water from the drainage. Universities where students don't have chairs to sit on and tables. Universities where they have to be hanging from the windows. These are things that are no longer fashionable. Slums are no longer fashionable. People deserve decent housing. People should not be dying from ailments that are curable. It is not acceptable. Politicians would be running for office on the 24th of June, 2023. What do you have for us as Sierra Leoneans? We are citizens, we are asking the questions, and we are putting forward the demand. It is incumbent that the political parties present to us top agenda items for these elections. We do not want to see that particular space filled with void of violence, bickering, hate speeches and misinformation. What that does is already adds salt to injury, and we do not want that situation. We do not want to see a situation where the entire election is about peace, peace, peace. No, we should not be fighting. Please put down the tension and let's talk. Democracy presupposes dialogue. Let's talk. Talk to us. I have identified those basic of issues. I don't want to see, as a Sierra Leonean, a Sierra Leone where we come again for another 5 years and citizens do not have access to safe and clean drinking water. That has long passed. So articulate it. Tell us where we will get the money to finance those plans, and then we'll start having the conversation.
Right.
Thank you very much.
Reverend?
Yeah,
James Lahai, not
I
Stephen
want
Campbell.
to speak to those who want to take power. Anybody who is going to win, please take care of the disconnect between the government and the people. Empower the people by giving them the space to take part in decision making in the country. It will help you. You might have very good intentions. You may mean everything you put in your manifesto, but when your management of that manifesto disconnects the people, you are going to definitely have problems. Go back to the decentralization policy. Examine it properly. Look at the linkages. Watch how even policies should be developed. How district council plans should be developed as it is in the Local Government Act. Going back to the various wards, doing the needs assessment by the very people. And when you come to the disbursement, let the people know what is going to them and what that which is going to them is expected to do. So they have a way of following up on whether what has been sent to them is what has arrived and what it has come for. It's actually what it is being implemented for. By that way, you are going to succeed.
All right.
I'm not going to the big things of those. These ones, the laws are there. It's just a matter of giving the power back to the people.
Thank you. Thank you. And this is where we end tonight's program. Thank you all for honoring our invitation. Reverend James Lahai, Marcella Samba, Lawyer Ibrahim Tomi, and Reverend Jubrila Kabu. Thank you very much. And thank you very much to you, our viewers and our listeners, and those of you who commented on the program on the AYV News Facebook page. We're sorry we couldn't take all of your messages. But a repeat on AYV channel 33 of the show comes up on Thursday at 10 p.m. Be sure to catch a fresh edition on this program next week, same time here on AYV. Up next is our AYV Primetime News. The show has been AYV on Sunday. My name is Samuel Weisbangora saying have a lovely night and wishing you all the best of week ahead. Thank you.